afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today because today I get to talk about something that I'm super energetic about. My life revolves around these two topics, technology and design. As a designer, it's hard not to get really excited about these two things. But one thing in interest is when we talk about technology and design, I think the first go-to thing, especially in exhibitry design, is that we start thinking about the technology that we can infuse into our designs. And that's totally accurate. And that's on the forefront of what you're always going to be thinking. But if we really want to step back and think about the technology that goes into the exhibits, the environments that we design, we also need to step back and think about the technology that we use every day. That's changing how we show up as designers. Our world is filled with technology. Literally everybody in here has a touch phone. We're all connected all the time. Everybody gets something when they want it now. And that can kind of become a problem in how everybody shows up. Because I will definitely say there's a total positive to how we show up, is having this technology at our hands. But I'll say that there are some negatives to that. And one of the biggest negatives that I see sometimes is that it's everybody wants instant gratification. We're all guilty of it. I am as well. We want something now. Well, in design, we know that doesn't really happen overnight. Nobody's going to expect you to design an exhibit in a day. They'll try, but they're not going to get it. And certainly you don't want to give up that time as a designer with having the time to create your vision. So what do? You have to start thinking about outside the box, how the tools that you use every day can impact how you design. So before we get into part one, which I like to call the nerdy part, I'm going to divide this talk up to two different things. I want to talk about the way that you use the technology to show up and produce faster work at a higher quality. Because I'll tell you, you can produce some really cool stuff, not in the midst of doing the design, but you can use the technology to get it there faster. And then the next part we're going to talk about afterwards is a little bit about how we can use that to tell our story a little bit better. So this is the part that I live in constantly, which is the nerdy part, if it's not apparent. And this is pretty much almost the epitome of every night for me. And I guarantee you that as designers, you're going to spend a lot of time sitting and staring at a screen. And of course, you're going to be thinking most of the time is how you actually design, which is all your bright ideas that you create. And you can be uber creative and really create some awesome work. But then it becomes the crunch time because we need to be able to get this stuff done a little bit faster. And the one big thing with the technology that you have at your fingertips every day on a computer is not being able to limit yourself on the speed that you do things, and also be able to draw everything that you can imagine. That's a huge thing because you don't want to be limited by just the knowledge that you're limited to in the software or the applications. So just as much as we push and we research and we figure out all this stuff when it comes to doing the design, we have to keep pushing ourselves utilizing the technology that we use every day. So it's a twofold process because honestly, as designers, we've got to be nerds because we've got to understand this stuff just to get our ideas across. So like I said on that point, we design a lot of different things and the environments are always different. So because each one of these environments and things that we do is always different, we also have to think about what's the best technology to get it there. And like I said before, we don't want anything to stop us. So from a creativity standpoint, if you want to think up this cool thing in your head that's all revolving curves and all this other stuff, you don't want to be sitting there then scratching your head, well, how in the world am I going to do that? You need to understand that technology that you're using. And this is the one thing, this is a killer for me as well, and I think it will be for everybody, is that due dates are always there. Because like I said, you're always going to want, your client or your prospect is always going to want something the next day. And also your coworker is pretty much going to be begging you the same thing as well. So being able to maximize your time designing and then utilize the technology to condense, but not give up the quality or your imagination on the end of it. So that way you can, as designers, use and maximize all that time that you have. So we use a bunch of this stuff, all this software, all these things, we use it every single day. Each on their own, I'm not going to sit here and preference one over another. It's all going to get you there. From my own standpoint, I've used the majority of all this stuff, and it's all beautiful. Even more so, just to show you how nerdy I am, Maya used to be referred to as my girlfriend. So thank God that's not the case anymore. So as we go forward, let's look at some of maybe what can help you. Now this definitely dives into the nerdy part. And for you people out there, I like to call them polygon counters. This is 52,000 polygons. It's a chair. I mean, it's a chair. Who cares? It's a chair. All right? But the cool thing is when you start to maybe make a few more of them. So this is 8,100 chairs. Now, how many people out here, I know a lot of people are sick of it when I say it, rendering all the time, just rendering, rendering, rendering. Boring as hell, So we don't want to spend our time just doing this every day. So how can we maximize and get there faster? Well, by understanding the software, just for example, this was 4 minutes. I could barely open the scene on my computer, but I could render it in 4 minutes. Now think of condensing that all across the time frame because you're going to do project upon project. So condensing it all to get it done faster and get it there. So think across the board, whether it's designing that cool looking exhibit with all the twisting curves or being able to have massive scenes that you need to render. It's great knowing the technology and be able to get there. And by the way, this wasn't rendered on a supercomputer. This was rendered on my laptop. So part 2, this is what we like to call the story. Now, when we design, we always have the why. We know why we're designing what we're designing. That's the story. But then there's a next step. We always have to think about then, well, what's the story? How are we going to present that story? And that's going to be the next conversation that you need to take because it is all about communication. So what is your story? And the cool thing in today's world that we live in is that we have a lot of avenues that we can go using technology to tell that story. A lot of them that you probably already know and you see every day. So think of it this way. An artist has many mediums that they can show up. They can be creative. They can have many different avenues of things that they want to be able to show an idea or a creative idea. Now, we as designers have the same exact thing now these days. We can use whatever software we want. We can create any kind of vision, and we can create basically whatever kind of thing that we want to show a client. And whether that's sketches, whether it's animations, it tells a story. I always think, when I get to a point and I have the design designed, I also want to start thinking about, what type of emotion am I going to try to create through the actual presentation itself? Because that's a big thing. You want to get the person connected into the design, not just putting it on a board. Because that, majority of what we do is putting it on a board. It's still an image on a screen. So what do you end up doing? Because it's just an image on a screen. So these animations and everything that you're seeing, you start to immerse the person a little bit in there. But now, it's great, but it's still on a screen. I'm not happy just with this. Because, there's a connection that's still lost. So this is where I love to be because I love to nerd out at this section here. It's called To Infinity and Beyond. And this is where we get to start to thinking, the technology can really help us connect to who we're trying to basically sell to, sell our concept and our idea into. So what does that mean? Well, if we're trying to get somebody into our design, we literally kind of want them to get into the design. We inherently, because we're designers, we work in 3D, we understand the space, we're in it, we understand it. But to get, sort of the layman or client or prospect to get to walk through a booth, it's difficult. To get them into a space or turn our model around in 3D, they get confused, trust me. So what can we do to go beyond that? Well, I think the controller gives you kind of an idea. There's other industries which are now all very much crossing over. This is a really cool thing because you can sit home and play your Xbox, your PlayStation, and all that other stuff. But now we're starting to see, these things have the opportunity for us to be able to communicate our ideas a little bit better. And I like to almost, it's a little bit more immersive. So now we can actually get into a space, have somebody control it, have them in the space to be able to change what they want, to be able to see it from how they would see it. So we don't have to sit there with just a two-dimensional, animation, a two-dimensional, basically graphic stuck on a wall. We're starting to now get immersified and into the space, which is really cool. But it's still on a screen. So what do we do to even push that further? Right? So this is kind of where I get really excited about because this is where it's going. Isn't it cool to think that I could and I'll explain this in a second, but that you could get somebody to jump into a space, visually look around, look through the ceiling, look up and down, and they're immersed in it. It would be like standing here on the stage and looking out. You start to get the idea of what's going on. And that's cool, because it's twofold. I mean, a designer, to be able to be in the space that they created, that's hard to do. You know, we have to wait till the environment's built, the exhibit's built, to be able to understand what the interaction was, how something was, you know, looked and created in sort of a real scale. So yes, it looks odd, and I can guarantee you that this is what I look like at home pretty much every other night as I'm screwing around with things. But I will tell you that what you walk away from is some of the coolest, you know, views that you would never ever get through just a two-dimensional screen. So just remember, the technology is really cool, but it's all, you know, you can basically flash a bunch of cool things to a client, and some of them may stick or some of them may not, such as the animations and all that stuff. But the biggest thing at the end of the day is, you know, creating an emotion and an attachment to the design, and also getting them immersed into the environment. You know, and this is current. This is stuff that's happening now. I mean, I can't even guesstimate what is going to be happening in 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it's friggin' exciting to think that the way we design is going to be very, very different. And this is just kind of the start of it, but as we move forward. It's going to be really neat to see what you guys are able to create using all this technology. And I really look forward to seeing, you know, how it's infused into the day-to-day operations that we do, because it's just going to be a beyond exciting world to be in at this point. Thank you very much.